Sometimes you touch death too close, but you do not die. When the whole world declared you busted, and then suddenly you emerged as a live warrior with no scratches on. This is the unbelievable scene from the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix. Romain Grosjean survived the terrifying fireball crash and his whole Formula car was crushed like sand. What do you think? How can a person stay alive when his car hits the barrier at extreme speed and the car breaks into two pieces? When the racing started just a few minutes later, Grosjean's car made contact with Daniil Kvyat's car as he attempted to avoid other cars. Grosjean turned sharply to the right and collided head-on with the metal fence at approximately 137 miles per hour. The impact was so severe that the force split Grosjean's car in half, with the rear part detaching from the driver's survival cell. Romain Grosjean started Sunday's Bahrain Grand Prix from 19th on the grid. A poor start by second-placed Valtteri Bottas slowed the entire rest of the field, creating chaos and an opportunity for Grosjean to make up spots in a car that has struggled for outright pace for the past year. He was already making up positions heading into Turn 1, and light contact between a Ferrari and a McLaren on the exit of Turn 3 created even more opportunity. Grosjean saw the opportunity to take another position, maybe even a few, heading into Turn 4, so he dove to the inside line and prepared to outbrake the cars that had exited Turn 3 with far less momentum. This is when his right rear corner struck the right front corner of Daniil Kvyat's AlphaTauri entry, forcing Grosjean off track at a high speed. On an ordinary Formula 1 track, Grosjean would have collided with a wall at a forgiving diagonal, spreading the impact out over the nose and side pod of the car as it slid along the wall or guardrail. Bahrain's Turn 3 exit, however, is a temporary guardrail, one that juts out into the paved off-track area meant to allow drivers to recover from exactly this sort of collision. Grosjean's trajectory just so happened to put him nearly perpendicular to the wall. The nose of his car seemed to hit precisely at a seam in the three-layer guardrail, splitting the barrier open. Rather than absorbing the impact, the wall halted Grosjean's car immediately. This is when the car split in two. The car is bisected at the point where the driver's protective carbon fiber tub connects to the powertrain and rear bodywork. The cockpit hit the guardrail with such force, Grosjean and the remainder of the car went clear through to the other side. Formula 1 cars carry a full fuel load at the start of every race, a safety measure designed to eliminate in-race refueling that can lead to fires in the pit lane. While most of Grosjean's fuel seemed not to ignite, the immediate and sustained fire implies that at least some fuel seeped out and caught flame. The fireball was enormous and explosive, engulfing only the cockpit area on the infield side of the barrier, the side Grosjean was sitting in. Seconds later, Grosjean emerged from the flames on his own. A safety team began putting out the fire, and Grosjean leaped over what remained of the barrier and walked to the waiting medical team. He spent an overnight in a hospital in Bahrain, but preliminary scans show no broken bones. Aside from burns on the backs of his hands, Grosjean escaped the horrific crash without major injury. Grosjean suffered the ultimate nightmare of any racing driver, a perfect storm of cascading catastrophes. Everything that could go wrong did all at once, and each component of the crash was meant to be controlled by a specific safety measure. Grosjean not only lived, he walked away from one of the most harrowing racing crashes imaginable without a single broken bone. To understand what went right, we also need to understand what went wrong. This starts with the collision itself, a simple result of on-track jockeying for position at the cramped center of a chaotic standing start that left a car careening off the line at a high-speed section of track. All of this is relatively routine, and would traditionally be countered by a flat wall or guardrail positioned to slow an out-of-control car with a glancing blow. Grosjean's car would hit such a barrier at an angle and slide along its length, dissipating energy and shedding speed. Instead, this particular wall juts outward, covering an access road made from existing runoff area. This positioning created a nearly head-on collision, the first thing to go wrong. Grosjean struck the wall at a reported 137 miles per hour. A three-piece steel guardrail, colloquially known by the brand name Armco, is designed to deform on impact, absorbing momentum and keeping the car from piercing through the barrier. The guardrail that Grosjean hit ended up splitting between the first and second bars, the forceful impact of the car's nose seeming to break the bars in two. This led directly to the worst elements of the incident. BBC Sports' Andrew Benson reported that the 137-mile-per-hour impact had a force of 53 G. That energy had to go somewhere. With the driver's survival cell suddenly stopped, the impact force pounded through the car, splitting the chassis in half at the point where the cockpit connects to the drivetrain and rear of the car. This splitting off is by design. The car is built to protect the survival cell by dissipating the impact elsewhere, and a violent crash can cause the drivetrain to snap off. But Grosjean's high-speed separation seems to have released fuel that was then ignited, creating a towering fireball, the third and most dramatic of the catastrophic failures that contributed to this crash. After the nose of the car pierced the guardrail, the next thing to hit would have been Grosjean's helmet. This was the fourth catastrophic failure of the crash, and the point where we get to see up close the life-saving power of recent safety changes. It was just 3 years ago when Formula One mandated the introduction of the Halo safety device that adds a secondary protective structure around the driver's helmet. Grosjean's halo made direct contact with the top portion of the barrier, a collision that should theoretically be impossible in the controlled conditions of a live race. It was not impossible, of course, and the halo ended up absorbing some portion of the impact. Grosjean likely survived the impact thanks to the halo. Without it, his helmet would have been directly in the line of the impact. It meant he could escape the fire on his own in under 30 seconds, avoiding more serious injury, and disproving some early fears that the halo would impede a driver's ability to get free of a burning wreck. Had he not been able to escape, Formula One's professional safety team was able to get to the car almost immediately. Fire protection gear is only effective for so long, and Grosjean was able to get out of the car before coming close to those limitations. Series Dr. Ian Roberts, who spoke with the Sky F1 broadcast team after the race, arrived at the crash so quickly he was able to help Grosjean over the guardrail as crews were still putting the fire out. Formula One's professional rescue team, like the IndyCar team that saved James Hinchcliffe's life in 2015, is a fully dedicated group led by Roberts since 2013 with extensive training in extracting, diagnosing, and treating drivers immediately at the scene of a crash. The rescue team's performance at Bahrain was a shining bright spot in this incident, with the safety car arriving mere seconds after Grosjean's car came to a halt. Thankfully, their role was minimal, but had things gone differently, had Grosjean been knocked unconscious in the crash, or had his tub been trapped within the mangled guardrail instead of piercing through, the rescue team would have been tasked with a difficult extraction under urgent time pressure. Instantly upon the brutal crash, the ruptured fuel tank fired up, destroying the front of the car in a massive fireball. The car hit through the guardrail, with Grosjean trapped inside the hell. That was an awful image, but a moment later, Grosjean was already out of the car wreckage, which was engulfed in flames, and jumping off the deck with the help of F1's Dr. Ian Roberts and medical car driver Alan van der Merwe. This extraordinary survival is a powerful reminder of the decades of tireless safety advancements in Formula One, led by the FIA. The introduction of the Halo cockpit protection device, once met with skepticism, played a pivotal role in shielding Grosjean from what could have been a fatal head injury. Instead, he emerged from the flames, bruised but alive. In just under 30 seconds, Grosjean's life was saved, not only by his instincts, but by the meticulous efforts of F1 to make racing safer. This crash shows how far Formula One has advanced in protecting its drivers, and in a way, makes Grosjean's escape an accomplishment in hardship. Romain Grosjean emerged with quite a few scratches and bruises from what was likely one of the most violent crashes ever recorded in Formula One racing. An investigation was organized almost immediately after the FIA thanks to the concern and interest about the serious nature of the crash and Grosjean's impossible survival. However, on the initial analysis, several factors came to light as very critical in averting a disaster. Grosjean had attained such velocity that he did not even have the opportunity to slow down before the inevitable collision happened. High-speed crashes are not anyhow surprising in F1 racing, yet in this case, what was unusual was the fact that the crash happened against a raw metal barrier rather than the more efficient modern protective barriers such as the tire walls or Tech Pro, which are built to withstand the force of impact and absorb impact energy more efficiently and progressively. This then explains how the accidents can be as bad as what was posted above, although in the absence of F1's safety evolution, it was his luck. The halo, a titanium safety structure that was introduced in 2018, was crucial in protecting Grosjean's life. When his car hit the steel barrier at 220 kilometers per hour, which means he was driving at an insane 137 miles per hour speed, the halo prevented the barrier from striking his head, absorbing the impact, and this has allowed him to escape severe head trauma. Formula One cars are designed with an extremely strong survival cell, or monocoque, which encases the driver. Despite the car splitting in two upon impact, Grosjean's survival cell remained intact, shielding him from the worst effects of the crash and the immediate fireball. In contrast to crashes in which the barriers were supplemented by Tech Pro or tire walls, Romain Grosjean's car slammed into the more standard type of metal barrier that did not have any additional protection. While some people have alluded to the fact that it was rather a big embarrassment that the barrier did not hold, yet another barrier went down with it. The sheer force of the crash together with the direction of the impact may have exceeded what any barrier type could take. Now, the details of the forces and dynamics of this particular accident have been covered in the telemetry and tools of the FIA. Such penetration of the barrier will become one of the most prioritized tasks of FIA's investigation. This data will be of great assistance to the advancement of higher safety standards so that such an incident will not take place in the future. While such a horrifying event occurred, it is remarkable how far they have come with regard to safety. However, at the same time, it shows that there is always room for improvement. The main takeaway from Romain Grosjean's accident would be that F1 safety measures should be refined on a constant basis. Even though the area of the circuit where Grosjean went off was rather unconventional of a place for any accidents, the FIA always has measures in anticipation of the unexpected, and all lessons from this particular crash are bound to improve the design and layout of even more advanced crash barriers in future. Once Grosjean's car pierced through the barrier, the front end became trapped. This prevented the car from properly dissipating the immense energy generated from the impact. With the monocoque, the driver's protective shell firmly held in place, the force caused the rear end of the car to break away from the survival cell. This separation, while dramatic, may have actually contributed to Grosjean's survival by absorbing and dissipating some of the crash energy. This part of the car is specially designed to protect the driver during extreme impacts. In Grosjean's crash, when the chassis became trapped in the barrier, the force generated by the heaviest part of the car, the engine and gearbox, was immense. This led to the failure of the structure around the fuel tank, which is typically integrated into the survival cell for added protection. Although the fuel cell itself is made of Kevlar and rubber and undergoes ballistic testing to withstand extreme conditions, the sheer force of the crash was enough to breach these defenses. However, despite the catastrophic split and the ensuing fireball, the survival cell still performed its core function of protecting Grosjean, giving him the precious seconds needed to escape. This incident highlights both the incredible effectiveness of F1 safety standards and the potential areas where further improvements can be made, ensuring even greater resilience in such extreme situations. The impact in Grosjean's accident was so extreme that it appears to have damaged or torn some of the connections within the car's structure, which likely led to the fire. The structure surrounding the fuel tank, part of the survival cell, forms a closed bulkhead just behind the driver. This is the section where the engine is bolted onto, providing stability and protection in normal conditions. However, in this crash, the massive forces involved caused parts of the car, including the battery pack, to break free and scatter as debris. The damage to these critical components may have contributed to the fuel leak and subsequent fireball. Despite these failures, the core survival cell remained intact, protecting Grosjean and enabling his escape. Grosjean was wearing fire-resistant race gear, including a suit, gloves, helmet, and shoes made from Nomex, a material that can withstand temperatures of up to 800 degrees Celsius, or 1,470 degrees Fahrenheit for a short time. This gave him precious seconds to survive in the flames as he scrambled to escape. This accident highlights the extraordinary safety designs in F1, but also presents opportunities to reinforce areas around the fuel tank and connections to further minimize such risks in the future. What are your thoughts on this brutal crash of the century?